Hello, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to Tasha's Tales. Today's guest is Iman. Iman, would you like to introduce yourself?
Of course, firstly, walaikum salam. So my name is Iman. I'm a youth bereavement ambassador for Winston's Wish, and I also create content on TikTok regarding grief. So that's me.
Winston Wish. What is
Winston's
that?
Wish.
Yeah, what is that?
Okay,
Tell us a little
so
bit about it, please.
Winston's Wish is the UK's first bereavement charity for young people. So they're doing a great job of supporting young people who are dealing with losses, whether it's family, friends, anything like that. They have a wide range of like resources on their website. They have a helpline, and they also support young people like me who've been affected by grief and who want to like help empower other people and support other people by sharing their stories. So I found out about them after my father passed away a few 2 years ago, and I had originally signed up, I think, within the first year, but I wasn't. I don't think I was ready to like start like giving back and talking more and taking on more projects because I had a lot going on. But Alhamdulillah, I think it's been almost a year that I've tried to be like that I've been trying to be active with them, and it's been great. So they have a podcast as well. So I've been on their podcast a few times and attended an in-person event, and I really enjoy it. I found a lot of people in this community in this with young people who I can relate with, and I think personally, because I'm so open about grief and have been on my social media, I think it's a little bit easier for me to speak about. So I try and take advantage of that because I understand that for a lot of people, it's not that easy. So alhamdulillah, I'm in a blessed position that I feel comfortable to talk about it. So I just want to try and make the most of what Allah has given me in this way. Because I try to view it as a positive, although it's a tragic thing that's happened, but I just try and think of it as how can I support myself and other people and continue with my father's legacy.
Yeah, really, really sorry to hear about your loss. Like you
Okay.
said, it is extremely tragic. How old were you when you lost your dad?
I was 20, so
Wow.
I was 20.
And had
Yeah.
he been unwell?
Yeah, so when I was born in 2001, my father got diagnosed a few months after, and for my whole life, like my whole life, he was ill. He had a numerous number of illnesses, but mainly like renal failure. So he struggled a lot with his kidneys. So he had a few transplants and stuff like that.
And was he on
So yeah, it
dialysis
was
as
just,
well throughout your life?
yeah, so he had a peritoneal dialysis when we were kids. I actually have lots of stories about that. There used to be 3 bags of water, and we used to set it up at home. And I was the carer for my dad. I was a young carer, so I had all the training and everything. And we used to go and set it up after dinner, rush upstairs, and then he'd be plugged in the whole night. So he had that before his first transplant. And then when that transplant happened, he went into immediate rejection. So he had to restart. But then, alhamdulillah, he had another transplant and it was all good. And then a few years ago, just before COVID happened, his kidney started to fail again, and we were awaiting another transplant. The donor was already there. The donor was my mum. Everything was already laid out, but unfortunately, because of COVID, everything was obviously pushed to a halt, and he started to deteriorate. And they were really trying to avoid going back onto dialysis. So then he started hemodialysis just a few months before he passed away. And I think obviously starting that again was very difficult. It really took a toll on his health. Yeah.
I'm really, really sorry to hear that.
Oh no,
My
it's okay.
Hala passed away and she was also a renal patient. She had
Okay.
dialysis and transplants. So I
Mm.
feel like you've touched, my
Oh,
heartstrings by talking about your father
yes.
and being a young carer as well. It takes a lot of tenacity and resilience to be a young carer. So respect you a lot for that, actually. One thing I wanted
Thank
to
you.
start with, Iman, was, when you go through grief, often you hear people say, "Oh, I just don't know what to say. Oh, I just don't know
Yeah.
what to say," and then they just go into shutdown mode. What would you say to people like those?
So for people who don't know what to say to people who have been bereaved,
Yeah.
I watched a really lovely video the other day on BBC Sounds, and it was a segment from one of the radio shows. And this woman was saying, like, rather than asking about how like generically speaking and saying how are you, that I think that's such, she was basically saying that's such a big question. And I really resonated with what she was saying. She said, maybe you just ask about specific small periods, like how was this part of your day? Like how was going to university, or how was going to work, or how was this part of the weekend for you? Because grief is such a massive emotion. Like there's so many things that come with it. For me, reflecting on it, I think it would have been better for me as well if people would ask me, okay, how was this aspect of your day rather than just how are you? Because it can take up a lot of energy and a lot of thinking to provide us an answer to how are you? Because you don't know if you feel comfortable to tell that person if they're ready to take on that information. So I say just break it down into small chunks. You don't have to go straight away to how are you specifically because that person might not be ready. But also just being there and just listening and providing a space and just informing them that you're here whenever you need them. That goes a long way.
Thank you. That's so deep, isn't it? I mean, it's not that difficult, is it? But it's really nice to be talking about it to understand how we can
Yeah,
support one another. Obviously,
yeah.
coming from a South Asian Muslim family, what role has that played in your journey of bereavement and grief?
It's played quite a big one, honestly. Like it's the way we grieve is really different to how other people grieve, I'd say. So that was one of the main reasons that I joined Winston's Wish was because I noticed that, okay, I don't think we're being represented here. And they were so happy to have me on board. And I said, look, I want to share our experiences. And I say, like, we have different cultural aspects and religious aspects. And I want to draw a line between them and make sure that there's a distinction. Because for me, what I felt is that our culture has its aspects of source and grieving and everything like that, but there can be some very hard and negative elements that I've spoken about online as well. And on the other side, there's religion. And for me, I found that religion and our deen and Islam really is grief compatible. And I think often people blur the line between the two of them and can associate the whole thing as being very toxic. And it's taking me some time and a lot of reflection and reading and seeking knowledge and thinking about my dad and other experiences to learn about how I can use my deen to support my grief. So it has really played a big impact. I think when I first lost my dad and the past few weeks after that and other experiences, I've had quite a few bereavements in my family since I was growing up. So I wasn't a person who wasn't used to grief. I knew a lot about it, and we've had, people coming to our house in and out when there's been like janazas and everything like that. So I was really used to like, they're in a better place now and like you can't cry and you shouldn't do this and Rona and yeah, all of these things, really, really used to it. And I remember when my uncle passed away, a lot of people were like, you just like need to move on from it. That's all you ever talk about. And that was a lot of the culture aspect of it. Then when my father passed away, we had the same thing, same people saying lots of different things and being like, you need to move on from it. Everyone passes away, submit jana, all of this stuff. But I really made sure to like try my best in to relate to my feelings and understand what I was going through because I was like, this is my loss, it was my dad. It's no one else's loss here as big as them for them to be saying you have to get over this. And then when I looked to Islam as like a guidebook for me, I really found that there was so much of what I was feeling was already there. And people are so quick to overlook, or maybe they don't know about it. So, for example, one of the biggest sources of comfort for me was that the Prophet Muhammad SAW in the seerah is documented like a year of his life was called Am al Huzn, which means a year of grief. And that was, even just hearing that statement just like really provided me with a lot of comfort and solace because it's like the greatest man to have ever lived, an example for us. He, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, like struggled with grief when he lost his wife Khadija and, his uncle, and he was bereaved at a really young age with his mum and his dad. All of these things, they're documented. And and also I was reminded of the time of my father's burial. The Imam said, he shared the words of the Prophet ﷺ when he lost his son Ibrahim. And he was saying, like, the eye shed tears for what they feels, and like the heart feels the loss. It's along the lines of this, but the tongue does not say anything that displeases Allah. And it was just so powerful. And then there's so many examples. There's another example being the father of Yusuf alayhi salam, Yaqub alayhi salam. Forgive me if I'm wrong. I think it was
It
Yaqub.
is, yeah.
He cried until he lost his eyesight because he thought that his son was gone. But he and his other sons, because he has so many sons, said to him, you've cried until you've lost your eyesight. You shouldn't do this. You have patience. But he said, no, like I have, and he was the one who had a beautiful patience, and he was still allowed to have those expressions and cry and feel and be natural. So often when I reflect and I talk to other people about grief, I'm like, you should touch into those emotions because I think a lot of people think, and maybe our culture is like, you're not allowed to have any emotions, you're not allowed to show. But Islam has documented and shown us all of these things that they're okay. And the best of the people who have come to this dunya have been through it. So it's totally normal for you to feel these things.
It's really refreshing to hear the young generation of Muslims changing that narrative and being really vocal about grief. Because grief is something that I've had a few losses in my life. I spoke about my Khala who passed away a few years ago, and we still keep her memory very much alive because for me, we need to carry on people's legacy. Just because they've left this dunya doesn't mean that we can't talk about them or pretend that they were never here. So it's really, really beautiful listening to you and expressing it from an Islamic point of view as well. So that's really, really lovely. What kind of things have you been able to do with the Winston's Wish? Is there anything that, any opportunities that you've had?
Yeah, it's been lovely. So I went to one of their events this year and I got to meet the other youth ambassadors. We had like a grief like photo day slash like workshop. And that was really nice because we got to be a bit creative. So like beforehand they would like send us 5 photos, we'll print them out, and then it was like a collaging workshop and I really got into it. I think I enjoyed it way too much. Because when I was a kid I loved collaging and scrapbooking. But that was really nice and then we got to film some content with them and it was just good to finally meet in person or the other youth ambassadors because we have youth socials every month and we get to speak to each other. But it was like a group of us and we made a group chat afterwards and we kept in contact and like it just felt, and we were cracking all of these jokes and it just felt really, really great to be with people who could openly speak about things, joke about things and, just you felt like you were a part of the community. So that was a really great opportunity. And then being on their podcast, Talk Grief, so I was on the last episode of season one, with a girl called Olivia, and that was really nice. We spoke about like finding hope in grief. And then just recently I was on another one with Troy and Toby, and we were speaking about different changes in our life as like a young adult. So whether that's like moving out, getting a new job, starting university, these type of things. So yeah, it's been really good. And then just the team are amazing. In terms of like what I wanted to bring to the table, I really wanted to focus on that lens of, Islam and South Asia, etc. So Alhamdulillah, in Ramadan time and Eid time, I was able to share a few things. I think it was a little bit difficult because obviously as Ramadan comes and Eid comes, with grief, like you can never plan how you feel. So I think there was a lot of things that I wanted to do, but because of how I was feeling, which is completely natural, I wasn't able to, and they was completely okay with it. They're so supportive. It's like at your own pace. But around Dhul Hijjah period time, I did share a little blog about like the importance of Dhul Hijjah, the sacrifice of uh, Ismail and Ibrahim alayhi salam, and like what that taught me about love and loss. It's been great to just voice and share with others the comfort that I find within my team and for supporting grief. And I'm really grateful that I found this charity for me to like work with, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, I must say this because I think integration for me, I'm quite passionate about integration and how important it is to integrate in order to represent. To
Yes,
be
yes,
seen and heard, to see a person of color, to see someone of the Muslim faith out there, to take
yeah,
away some
yeah,
of the narratives that are out there in the media.
definitely.
And I think we need voices like yours to change that. And it's so beautiful to hear that, you're there representing and also talking about your grief in a positive way. Let's
Mhm.
talk a little bit about your dad then, because I would quite like to
Yeah.
know the man who raised such a beautiful woman.
Uh,
Let's, have you got any siblings?
yeah. So we're three sisters. I'm the middle child. I have an older sister and a younger sister.
Okay. So what was your
Yeah.
dad like? What was he like as a person? Let's talk, tell me about him.
I'm I'm probably gonna get emotional because I just love him so much in the best way. My father was such an incredible human being. Like the amount of love that he gave us and he gave my family and that he continues to shower over me today. I truly, I can feel him around me. And I think one of the reasons why I don't want to say bounce back, I really want to try and be careful with my words, but I understand that everyone has a different grieving process. But for me, one of the reasons I was able to dig in and ground myself a little bit in trying to recover and heal and and just go through this grieving process was because I could feel what he would say around me because he'd said it 100 times. He'd given me so much of his love that like in when someone says like if you're going through something bad and you've lost someone, just think of what they would say. I really wouldn't have to think that far. It was not miles away. It was here. It was close to me. It was within me always. It was within the air around me, in the blood around me, in my blood that like surrounds me, because he was just incredible. So of course, like I mentioned, that he was ill our whole lives, but that never dulled his sparkle ever. He, subhanAllah, just had the most incredible personality. It just so lively, just loved being around family, loved being around kids. Our house was always full of us, our cousins just, being loud. He loved watching movies. He loved watching movies with us. We'd always have like family movie nights, Disney night, all of this stuff. And he was a man who was just so down to earth and just so humble. And he taught us so much about the deen. And I think one of the things that was special towards mine and my dad's bond compared to each of my siblings had a different bond, and each of my family members had a different bond with my dad. But for me, I really think that our basis was faith. My name is Faith as well, but our basis was faith and just talking and sharing about Islam. So like I have memories of being back home. We grew up in quite like we were the minority in that area, so we had to drive. We had mosque, alhamdulillah, but like for events and stuff, we drove to a different city, like half an hour away, and we'd go every Friday to attend like this halaqah, like this bayan, like this talk on a Friday night. And I just remember that's something me and him did, and then we'd go and get a doner kebab, sit in the car park, and then go back home. Just stuff like that. And he was just so kind, and he was so gentle, and he never raised his voice at us, and he just go above and beyond for us, and he was so selfless. And for a person in any position who is ill, they totally, completely have the right to be selfish or to want their kids to stay around. But he never wanted his illness or his whatever was going to happen to him in the future to stop his kids from going forward. Because he was like, you guys need to have life experience. You guys need to go through this. You need to build. You can't stop your life from going ahead just because of me. And he really didn't. And it's not like we neglected him either, but like it was just a perfect. And he always used to say, you have to have everything in a balance and in moderation. And he really taught me that. I just have so many memories of just sitting with him, especially Ramadan is literally the hardest for me because it was just always me and him going to Taraweeh together. We'd always just sit and listen to Quran together, watch, Makkah live, and we'd watch Omar Suleiman together and like all of these things. And just we loved that time. That quality time was revolved around Islam. So I'll be honest, after he passed away, and it's something that I still struggle with today, is sometimes when I miss him so much, I think I also struggle to connect somehow with my worship and my faith because, I just miss him so much. Like it's just sometimes it's just like I don't feel right doing it without him, but that's my test, and of course I have to continue, right?
Yeah,
And you learn from everything.
yeah.
But I just he was just incredible. I can't like he had a smile on his face. He never was like he was never low. He was always upbeat, even if he was ill. Our best memories were spent in the hospital. His 40th birthday, we were spent in the hospital. He had his little side room. And I remember we had chicken and chips, and he was like, "Oh, I'll never make it to 50." Because it was this running joke in our family. And we were really open about it. I think really desensitized to illness and death from a young age, which I think made a lot of people uncomfortable.
Mm.
But my dad was just like, he was like, it's gonna happen one day. It's gonna happen. We had the death talk so many times, but alhamdulillah, like he wanted us to be aware of the reality, but it wasn't a dark reality.
Yeah.
It was a like he was just I just don't know how to
So
explain it.
how
Like he
old
would
was he when he passed away?
51.
Okay, so he's got to
He
celebrate
made
his
it to
50th
50.
birthday.
Yeah, we were yeah, his 50th birthday, he was like, I'm happy now. He was like, I made it. Because subhanAllah, like growing up, like we actually didn't even think he was gonna see us like move out, go to university, graduate, different things like that. But we got to some of the milestones, so alhamdulillah. But
Alhamdulillah.
it's just, yeah, I mean, I still feel him around me. It's just, it's very difficult because I was 20. And for
Yeah,
me, like, I'll forever be stuck at 20 and he'll forever be stuck at 51.
yeah,
And when I'm navigating life's changes and milestones, it's just so difficult. And I think as a young person, I'm really struggling with the fact that I'm going through all of these changes, but everyone around them is lucky enough to still have their parents and their fathers. It's something that I don't think I voice a lot that I'm struggling with, but it is really hard, like that internal pain, because I think everyone knows how much I love my dad. I'm so vocal about it. And for me, it's like I keep him alive, but that loss is repetitional, like it keeps repeating.
mm,
I watched another video and this person was saying that like it's there's not just one loss when you lose them, it's repeated losses, secondary losses of the loss of this thing that was supposed to happen or this milestone that's come or this time that's come. And as a young person and like, you know, in my 20s and adulting and different things, I could really use his advice right now. Like after I've just finished university, I'm about to graduate, I'm trying to find a job, like different things going on in the world. I really feel like I need my father. And
yeah,
although I can feel his love, of course, like the lack of wisdom and knowledge is there. And I think I have to just pace harder just to get to that
yeah.
result. But
And I
it's just
think,
something that I'm going to have to deal with.
yeah, yeah. And I think even coming on podcasts and raising awareness, you're doing so much to raise awareness and deal with the grief in your own way, right? And I bet that changes from a day to day in terms of how you cope with it and how you
Yeah.
deal with it. I wanted to ask, before starting recording our podcast, we spoke about recording our loved ones and the conversations. Tell me a little bit about
Yeah.
that because that's something that's quite
Mhm.
new to me. Mm,
Yeah.
But yeah, I would like you to explain a little bit about that,
Yeah,
please.
of course. So I've always just been, I guess, like glued to my phone when I was like a teenager growing up and stuff. And I think a lot of people used to get annoyed about me. But I think it started from something so simple as, okay, so I had an uncle and so it was an incredible uncle and his loss really affected me. But he was, oh, what a man. He was a Fangar, he was a Shire. So he was a poet and he had amazing poetry he used to do. And he also had a beautiful voice, so he used to sing. And I have this voice recording, and I could hear my dad at the beginning saying, record this, and it's my uncle singing. So I think this started off like I started recording different snippets of my life from 2015, 2016, because my uncle then passed away in 2017. So I still to date now, I have this shairi that he's given to me. I have a few of them and a few of his like really old ghazals that he'd sung. So I have that. And then after he passed away, I have a recording actually of the days and he passed away, as in like the day after or the day of the janaza, and I'm recording it sitting with my grandmother, my dadi, Amma, amazing person, amazing woman, mashallah.
Mashallah.
And she's telling me this tale about sabr, and that was the first thing I recorded of her, and it's about 17 minutes long, and she was telling me this old folk tale about sabr and about, you know, just really wise. And then from then, I've got so many. She passed away in 2018, but that whole year, I've got different recordings. So I've got something so precious to me, and it's just her dua. My amma used to make such long duas. I don't know if you've ever observed old people reading namaz or anything like that. They really take their time with their prayer, and like the way that they ask for things is so poetic and so beautiful. So I have like a 5 minute recording, and that was so beautiful. I shared it on TikTok earlier this year. So I have that, and then I have stories of her, you know, like talking about her life and her family. And I'd really recommend other people to do this. So for me, I'm very sentimental anyway, but something that I would recommend other people to do with their grandparents is ask them about their family members and then with their names so you can make what's it called family tree. Because I'm working on a family tree. Actually, I've been working on it for years now with one of my other aunties, and I still am yet to finish it. But what helped was having the names of everyone. Because again, that uncle, I remember having a conversation with him when I think it must have been 2015, but it wasn't recorded. And my uncle that passed away knew 7 generations back names, like still things that I don't remember. But yeah, it was just incredible.
Wow.
But again, with my daddy, like with Amma, I have the names of saying, oh, I said, oh, Amma, what's your mother's name or what's this name? And then I have the story of her getting married, and then I just have different clips and stuff, and I can hear her laugh, and it's so beautiful. So I did that a lot. With my dad, I'll be honest, I don't think I recorded. I don't want to say it enough in terms of I did a lot of like clips and videos, like when you're a kid, you know, you're just like taking videos of funny things. I have a lot, alhamdulillah. I share that really widely on my TikTok, and I think that's a lot of people have resonated with that because I see other people posting about their grandmothers or their nannies and their daddies and their dads, and I love watching that content. I really resonate with it. It's the most wholesome thing ever. So I always say that there's so many different like ones that I watch. So yeah, with my dad, I had loads of snippets of him in hospital or just doing something goofy or funny, and I really love that. And then I do have some hard ones that I haven't really shared because it's really, really emotional, which is the time he was passing away because he was in hospital for a long period before he passed away. And I have one from when he came out of his surgery and he's like very drugged up, but it's really beautiful because he was just saying, "Don't worry about me." And it was the first time I heard his voice in days, and he was still very humorous. That was the last time I have that. And then I have one of him just he was stable. He hadn't had his surgeries, but he was saying, you need to focus on yourself and all of this stuff. I think those ones are a bit more personal, so I've like decided to keep them for myself. But what I like to share is, and what I love to share is just his smile, because his smile was just so radiant and pure. So yeah, I'd really encourage everyone to like take memories and take these pictures and record just naturally, because you are going to thank yourself later. Because people come back to me, they're like, "Can you send me this? Can you send me that one? Can you send me this?" I'm like,
Yeah, it's
"Yep."
amazing. It's amazing. Can I ask, were you there when your dad passed away?
Yeah, it was. So it was a difficult one. So basically, my dad got admitted so he was in that hospital. So he got admitted in January of 2022. And by chance that day, I was on the way. So basically, I was at home and then I needed to go study in town. And my dad was just on his way to dialysis. So my mum gave me a lift. He was like, "Yeah, I'll drop you off and I'll drop your dad off." So I was on his last ever journey away from home. He never knew he wasn't going to come back. And then I remember being like, "Mum, are you going to come pick me up?" She's like, "Oh, they're keeping your dad. He's got some tests." And I was like, "Right, okay." She picked me up at the end of the day, but he was still there. And then that's when they found some issues with his bowels. So then he got transferred to another hospital. So he got transferred to London. He got transferred to Guy's. We have a lot of history there with the transplants. And his brother, who was 1 year older than him, also passed away there from a kidney transplant. And he was actually put in the same ward and the same room as his brother when he passed away. And the nurse that was there back in 2009 remembered him because their names are very similar, just like a one letter difference. So then he was there, and it was I can't remember what the variant of COVID was called at the time, but it was like this weird thing where it was like each hospital had a different protocol. So if I went to our local hospital, we would have been fine. We could have gone in. With this one, the Guy's hospital, I went up and I traveled. I had to do a COVID test and I still could only see him for 2 seconds. They wouldn't let me go. Then he was transferred to Cambridge, where he had a previous surgery 10 years ago. He was there for a month and we weren't allowed to see him. He was there for a month. My mum could only see him for an hour a day. And so she was staying in accommodation and I'd come and go, and I remember I'd just go to the mosque in Cambridge because I couldn't go anywhere else. So I could stay with my mum, but I wasn't allowed to see him. Then our mum would FaceTime us when we were in there. And I remember I have a lot of frustration that I'm holding on to from that period of time because for me, it felt like I didn't lose my dad in March. I actually lost him further in January because there was at least 6 weeks of time that we could have had with him, but we weren't allowed to due to some restrictions and some variant that I don't want to comment on that, but like just we should have been. And there was points where he had two surgeries, major surgeries, that we could have been like, okay, let us see him, but they didn't allow. And I'll be real with you, like my dad was very open with me, and I think because I was a carer and me and my mum were the carers compared to my sisters, we already knew that he wasn't going to make it. And my dad at the beginning of the year, I truly believe people know that they're going to go because my dad said to me, "I'm not going to make it before Ramadan." And Ramadan came 2, 3 weeks after he passed away. But anyway, what I was saying was, so yeah, like at that point, he had really two major surgeries, and we knew he wasn't going to make it. There were so many points where I feel like they should have called us and been like, "Okay, yeah, the family can come now." While he was awake, they called us the night before he died, saying that he's not going to make it on the 5th, and he was already unconscious at the time. So I was there, but couldn't see him. And then the next day, I was there the whole day, and yeah, he did pass away, and I was there. And I actually do have another recording from that day that I've held on to, where I'm not recording his face so you can't see him, because I also believe there should be dignity in death. But I wanted to, I don't know why I recorded it, but it happens to be something that I held on to for a while. And I recorded the moment that my mum was making the dua like, and all of our family members were in the room, and it was a really, really beautiful and a really emotional dua. And I did share that as well. And I think maybe the reason why I shared it because I think it was a beautiful example of what should be said at the time of death rather than anything else. Just dua is the only thing that can help really and everything like that. So I held on to that. But yeah, I was sad when he passed away, but there was a lot of periods where like I was so close, but I just couldn't see him. They wouldn't let us in, and it was really difficult. So
Yeah.
it's something that I've had to juggle with.
That's really, really tough. I don't even
Yeah,
have words to
yeah.
express how sorry I am that that time was taken away from you.
Honestly, I tried so much. I tried so hard, especially from going from when you've grown up in hospital, genuinely, like I knew our local hospital like the back of my hand,
Yeah.
and they had no problem. We would go in and out, and I understand we have to take everyone in safety precautions. We were doing COVID tests, everything like that, because this was after the big COVID wave. It was 2022,
Mm,
so it passed by then. There's different variants, but I just felt like there had to be a little bit of understanding, compassion about like, okay, he's awake, let's just call them, but.
yeah.
Allahu Alam, Allah could plan that. And at the end of the day, I say what my dad used to say, Allah Musta'an, Allah knows best and it's whatever Allah decreed. And I have to understand that. But there definitely is some hurt there that like, there's that yearning that I could have just had that extra time.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I can only imagine. What are your coping mechanisms right now then?
Ah, I don't know. You know what? I feel like at the moment I'm really numb and I go through different phases. Like it's really hard for me to say how I'm coping because everyone is so, so different. I think some periods I remember talking a lot to my family, or other periods I'm very quiet, or other periods like the summer after he passed away, like I just kept myself so busy with work. I had two jobs. I was working nonstop like a donkey. At the moment, I'm just trying to take it easy. I think I've had a lot of different changes in my life, and I'll be real. I have to understand my how I'm feeling and how exhausted I am. I think I've been on like a, like go mode for ages. So I'm just trying to slow down. For me, my coping mechanism is right now understanding and what my body wants, listening to myself, and just trying to take it slow. And whether that means like not saying no or not signing up for many things and just taking it easy.
Oh, well, I must say
Because I think I need
thank
to
you because
relax.
you said yes to me.
No, no, it's okay.
I,
It's my
do you know
pleasure.
what, Iman? I'm really, really sad because we only have 3 minutes and I still have so many questions. I feel like
Anytime I'm here.
easily you are just incredible. Your dad would have been
Oh,
so
thank you.
proud of you, and
Thank you.
you
I
are
feel bad.
exceptional. The way you explain things, the calmness is in your voice. It's really, really beautiful. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I'm
It's really kind of you to
also
say.
really gutted. I don't really use TikTok, so all these videos and things I'm not seeing. Bring them to Instagram, but I will share all the
Oh,
links onto the description.
thank you.
Before we part, is there anything you would like to share? Any thoughts? Anything?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm I'm working on a project, inshallah. It started off from an idea very similar to this. Like I bought the mic for the podcast basically after my dad died, and then I still haven't ended up using it for my own podcast. But inshallah, my plan is to make a podcast. I've got the name and everything. I'm just struggling because I've had the idea for ages. But if anyone wants to help contribute, because I don't want anything I do to be just a one person thing. I want it to be collaborative because for me, why I joined the charity and my aims for the future is to make a collaborative community and like a space that is cohesive with everyone to share their experiences and reflect. So if anyone wants to reach out, I'm more than happy to talk and support. I haven't got a date set or anything like that. I'm still like trying to figure out what I want to do. I just finished university, but do like stay tuned for that, inshallah. And just again, my like a last message is like your loved ones will always be with you. You don't have to reach that far. Just keep them in your prayers and just remember how they'd want you to be smiling and joyous and laughing, how they live their lives. And when you hold on to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, truly He makes everything easy. And it is difficult at first, but you'll grow with it. There's hard days, there's easier days, and some days are just normal, and that's completely okay. Just don't let anyone ever feel like you don't deserve to grieve because they were your person and Allah built that such a beautiful relation for you to what? Just forget. No, it doesn't end like that. These bonds are forever. So just always hold on to that.
Oh, Alhamdulillah, that's beautiful. Thank you. Really, really appreciate it. I wish I
No
had
problem.
time to talk even more, but no doubt I will be listening to your podcast. I will be sharing your podcast and I will be supporting you wholeheartedly, I promise.
Thank you so much. That's so
Okay,
kind.
Jazakallah khair. Take care.
You
And
too.
I wish you all the best and you're going to be
You
in my
too.
du'as for sure.
Thank you so much for having me. Honestly, it's so kind of you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.